improvisation, you just make up, and he was like, no, you're not making anything up. You're embellishing on the things that you know.
I caught up with the great saxophonist Mark Gross at the NAMM show, and we sat down for a wonderful conversation about his process of learning and teaching music over a decades-long career, where he's played alongside such legends as Dizzy Gillespie, Lionel Hampton, Jimmy Heath, Dave Holland, Nat Adderley, and many, many more. I absolutely love interviews like this one, where we get some real first-hand information as well as plenty of nuggets of pure gold. Please enjoy my conversation with Mark Gross.
Mark Gross.
Yeah,
it's
man.
so good to meet you in person, and I can't wait for our conversation.
Yeah, well, I will say to that, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've followed you on your channels and seen the great stuff you present, so it's my honor.
Wow.
Thank you for asking.
That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
It always feels weird to have, people I admire like you say stuff like that, and I really appreciate you watching. I appreciate everybody watching.
Yep.
So, it's funny, I was just talking to Jimmy Merchant, one of your former students.
Yep.
And yesterday when we were with Don Braden, you guys I overheard you talking about, I played here, and there was all former students, and I played here, there's all former students. So you guys have now just these, all these former students.
Yeah.
And maybe we could, and Jimmy, so I saw to Jimmy, I'm gonna do an interview with Mark Gross now. Oh yeah, that was my teacher. And he saw how much he loved you and studying with you, and what a great teacher and person you are.
Yeah.
And, and man, that's just a beautiful thing, like this legacy of teaching. I mean, it's so much a part of any cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, kind of need to embrace that cyclical passing on the torch. So I would love for you to maybe just talk about that.
Yeah, well, as you alluded to, I've been really fortunate to play and be around, as we call them, the grandmasters. Jimmy Heath, Frank West, James Moody. Played with Dave Holland. I've played with Nat Adderley. I've played with Lionel Hampton, Dizzy Gillespie. The list goes on. And this is over the course of my career, of course, 30 plus years on a professional level. So for me to have been around them and just kind of garnered so much of the history of the music, but more deeply intricately connected to the social part of the history of the music, like being on the road with Jimmy Heath, for instance, and him talking about, like, for instance, I was the Dizzy Gillespie big band. I was in that band. Saxophone section was B. Antonio Hart, Jimmy Heath, James Moody, Gary Smulyan. And likewise throughout the band, Slide Hampton, Claudio Roditi, the list goes on, right? But hearing them talk about their experience of music and traveling and some of the things that they had to deal with on a social, kind of a level, but still the intention of them wanting to make sure that that music got presented in a certain way, as well as being around people who were, of course, Mr. Heath was an educator, those who valued the importance of making sure that the true legacy of the music stayed a part of the curricular part, because a lot of times the academia can kind of become something abstract from the true integral part of the music. So for me, having a student such as, Jimmy Merchant, and being able to share with him the pedagogy of music, but also talk to him about, well, when Jimmy Heath was living in Philadelphia, he and John Coltrane, or as Jimmy Heath would say, he and John went to go hear Charlie Parker one night, and they both, after the concert, they both went home. This is both when they were both playing alto. So they go home, sing nothing to each other on the ride home. The next morning they touch base, and then there was like, man, what was that? And there was like, Mr. Heath said, well, if that's how you got to play alto, I'm playing tenor. But those kind of stories of like really them, of course they lived and experienced it, but seeing them at a formative part of their journey, almost as if, before they became the icons that they are, really hearing the path that they took to get to the music. For me, one was inspiring, but it was also encouraging in that they were willing to share this. And so for me, I have to continue that sharing of the information and the knowledge and the inspiration of the music to younger musicians, because I'm now them. I'm at an age in my life where, you know, the mantle, like you said, has sort of been passed. So I got to keep that legacy alive.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you and lots of others have been doing that. You know, I went to Queens College.
Yeah.
And I studied with Antonio Hart.
Yeah.
And this was, you know, Mr. Heath was not there anymore, but he came in regularly.
Yeah.
He was still writing charts. And we would like rehearse the charts. And then, you know, I used to go see the Dizzy Gillespie Big Band.
Yep.
And I played for Jimmy Heath's 80th birthday celebration at Queens College. And in the audience, right in the front row, was Frank West.
That's what I mean. And exactly.
And, you know,
right.
So I got to have, you know, and Tony was a great teacher. And that was a big part of that experience.
Yep.
Of sharing. Yes, there's the pedagogy.
Yeah.
There is what you learn in school.
Absolutely.
But there's so much of this music and really anything that's really cultural that is not, you know, just in the books.
Yeah. It's so beyond that. And I think it resonates more deeply with understanding the social impact of the music. Like, again, when I was working with Dave Holland, for instance, and I recall one day on the bus, I'm looking at him and he's just sitting there just grooving. He had his headphones on, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's checking out some Oscar Pettiford or Ray Brown, you know, Ron Carter. So I said, Dave, what are you listening to? He said, I'm checking out Busta Rhymes. But again, because he said, I love his groove, I love his flow and all of that. But, you know, such as a Miles Davis or, you know, I mean, many others, the influence of other genres of music, I think, are also important to talk about and to kind of pass on. Because Mr. Heath also would talk about, when he and John Coltrane were coming up, how they played in blues bands, how they, you know, so playing these little blues bars and, you know, just kind of playing that style of music. Even when you think about it, Charlie Parker, his whole path into music, outside of the big band, you know, the Jay McShann and all that stuff, but they played all of that style of music, but still didn't lose themselves in the music. And I think, you know, part of what I do personally, as well as try to pass on, is that you have to be true to yourself. You have to pass on the music that resonates with you, and whatever that becomes is what it is. You know, you can't put the label on that this is what it is. I think the best musicians for me have been those who have been authentically themselves and brought all of that. Roy Hargrove, for instance. Roy could be in any setting, and he did it. He would play with rappers, he would play with poets, he'd play with hip-hop artists, he'd play with the jazz giants, he'd play in a big band, or he'd go to a little jam session 3 a.m. and play with students.
Yeah. And I saw him do all those things.
That's what I'm saying. And again, that's like, you know, he was a disciple of keeping the legacy of that alive. And to a large degree, we still need a Roy Hargrove out here in so many areas, but particularly with the younger musicians. Like you've seen him, he would be 2 a.m. at Smalls playing with younger cats, and not only would he be trying to correct them of like how and what they're not doing in the music, but he would demonstrate and show them in a compassionate way the right changes, the right melodies, how to play on these tunes. And it was like, nobody was doing that on that level.
Right.
For whatever reason, you know, not that people are obligated to do that, but Roy it resonated so passionately with him. And so me, to a large degree, is the same. It's like when I'm on my educational side, I think it's so important to demonstrate and show them what it can be at its fullest. So that means exposing them to other artists, playing and demonstrating for them, showing them other ways that they can approach trying to get to that ultimate thing in a way that makes them feel like they're still connected to what is authentically them. You know,
that's like the magic of of this music in
Yeah.
particular, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a very strong tradition that needs to be
Right.
that makes it what it is.
Right.
And that's the whole beauty of it. And I feel like that is the thing that is maybe the hardest to articulate or communicate in the early stages of students. And it's confusing because the way we learn other things is not the same way.
The same. Yeah.
We're used to learning these are the rules, or this is how it works.
Yeah.
And then when you try to apply that to something like jazz, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
But it's very nuanced.
And I think that the arts in general are like that because it's like you're saying, it's so subjective. Like what I may think is good and is cool, someone else could come along and say, no, that ain't right, whatever. But however, like you're saying, there are some key pillars and tenets that are essential to any art form, particularly jazz. Jazz, I remember Gary Bartz once talking about, in terms of jazz improvisation and how people would say, oh, it's just, improvisation, you just make up, and he was like, no, you're not making anything up. You're embellishing on the things that you know, and you're trying to display them as best you can. He says, making up, jazz improvisation is not making up something. It's a studied language, it's a studied art form that is it requires as much skill as a carpenter, as a doctor, as a lawyer. There are certain things that are fundamentally important in jazz improvisation. But the beauty of jazz improvisation is that once you master those skills and understand what those are, you can infuse the emotional connection to that, which again, for me, it separates someone who is a real kind of a technical player versus someone who has the ability. My love is Canon Ball. So to me, Canon was a great example of that. He embodied the technique that was required to play the music, but he also embodied understanding how to communicate with an audience. He understood how to resonate with the blues. He understood how to talk to the audience, to pull them in, his whole repartee, make them feel a part of what that. So as a musician, I think those things are important because again, an audience, they're not naive and they're not, you can turn off an audience quickly if they sense that you're just up here and it's all about me and I'm just going to show you all my stuff. That model is kind of passé,
Well, yeah, and what is the point? What is the point of doing that?
Yeah.
Music is about sharing some sort of communication.
Yeah.
And if you're only communicating with yourself and not even the other musicians,
right, then what's the point? Yeah.
What is the point?
What's the point?
Why would you want to do that?
Right. And even deeper to that is like making sure that on the bandstand, everyone is in alignment with that same thing, so that everyone understands that as a unit, as an ensemble, we need to be reactive to one another, trust one another, so that there's no fear of trying to explore on the bandstand, but that exploration also has to bear in mind the audience. Again, being around masters as I was privileged to be around, I find myself sitting in Elvin Jones' dining room table one night after a gig that they did at the Blue Note. One of my dearest friends, Delphio Marcellus, was in the band. And so he invited me with him to go to Elvin Jones' house after the gig. And his wife, Keiko, fixed us something to eat. And so I asked him, I said, Mr. Jones, what was it like playing night after night with John Coltrane? And it was just like, he got real serious. He was like, you had to be willing to die for a boop, 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 boop. He said nothing musical. He was like, I would have taken a bullet for John. He said, and so for me, that meant, you got McCoy, Jimmy Garrison, Elvin, and John Coltrane, the level of trust that they had for each other and respect, at least musically, because I didn't know them personally, musically, it resonated through the music. And that's why we love when we put on, Giant Steps or any of those iconic recordings, Live at the Vanguard, you hear that connection. Or even like once, again, talking about Dizzy Gillespie, when I was with Lionel Hampton, Dizzy Gillespie toured 2 weeks with the band. We were doing a bunch of one-nighters. And so, because at that time I was the young guy, they put me all the way in the back of the bus, by the bathroom. Fine. We had the 3 rows in the back. I could sit and stretch out on the long bus rides. And Dizzy Gillespie sat back there because he smoked. So, but he was one chair right in front of me. So you can imagine, I'm sitting on this bus, looking at the back of Dizzy Gillespie's head, going like, it's Dizzy Gillespie. So one night he turns around and we start talking. To shorten the story, so after a couple of nights of us talking, I said, with all due respect, Mr. Gillespie, I'm an alto player. What was it like working with Charlie Parker? And again, it was like one of those light bulb moments. And for the next week and a half, every night, he would talk to me about Charlie Parker with such reverence, genius, admiration. And he's like, for me, talking to Dizzy, he was saying this to me, he said, for me, there was no equal. Like, I felt like when Charlie Parker was on the bandstand with me, that was my soulmate. Like, they could play any tempo, any key, any tune. And he said, whatever the ideas were, it just felt like he and Charlie Parker was just like this. And again, talking about the inspiration. So part of like the sharing for me is to tell my students about some of these experiences, not to be braggadocious about, oh yeah, I toured with I played with Dizzy Gillespie. Yeah, I did, but it wasn't that. You know what I mean? In as so much as it was, as a student, I'm fortunate to be around these grandmasters, and I was, whether it was a stroke of luck or genius, I was fortunate to ask the right questions, to have them open up and just share all this stuff that we wouldn't get necessarily from reading a book or whatever.
I mean, this is why I love doing these interviews.
Yeah.
And for me, this is the most valuable content on the YouTube channel when we have people like Mark Gross talking about these things. And I wish more people understood that. And I want to get that message out.
Yep.
Because what you're saying, your experience, that one of many, and being able to share that and talk about it. And then as a student, being able to understand this concept of jazz music and the improvisation and everything is all about a relationship. It's about trust. It is it is a profound thing. And this is an ingredient. First of all, I'm not reading any book that I've ever read about. And it's almost, which you go so far as to say, without that ingredient, it's not really the real thing, So we should be talking more about how do we get to that place to really experience, because when you experience that, that's when you're hooked. That's when it's like a drug. That's when it's like, this is, I want to do that every night.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't care if I have to sit on a bus for how many hours. Because that is an experience you cannot get anywhere else.
No. I think to get to that level, and I think we're all on different platforms of that, trying to get there, meaning that to get to a level of trust, to really go deeper into the music, particularly the exploration of it, you got to do your homework. That doesn't mean that you get on the bandstand and now all of a sudden I'm going to just start trying to do stuff I've never done before and hope that somebody... No, that means you got to do your hours and hours of practicing. You got to study, or if you're fortunate, get with somebody to help you fine-tune these things. You got to do intensive listening. You got to go out live and listen to music. You got to analyze. It's like hours and hours of your own homework. There's no genie in the bottle. You just got to put that time in. I remember, again, years ago, 20, 30 years ago, having a conversation with Branford Marsalis. And at that time, I felt like I was kind of in a rut a little bit. And so he was like, what are you doing? What are you listening to? And I gave him the list of cats. He was like, listen to somebody else. And he threw out the name. He said, check out some Ornette Coleman. Again, of course, I was saying, Canon Ball, Sonny Stitt, Charlie Parker, the hard bop cats. He said, check out some Ornette Coleman. He's playing bebop. it's kind of, it's not as in that formula as Charlie Parker and Sonny Stitt and Canon Ball, whatever, but it's bebop. And so, point being is that what I tell my students as well is that they have to be open to listening to other music. Everything is not going to resonate with you. Like for me, for instance, I listen to gospel music. I listen to poetry. I listen to some hip hop artists. I listen to R&B. Some of the things I like, some I don't. But the things I like, it becomes a part of the fiber of who I am. And ultimately, that kind of translates and transcends into the music. The best of musicians, again, I feel, are those who kind of were studied, but also open to exploring those things. Wayne Shorter, Miles Davis, Kenny Garrett, one of my good friends who's now nominated for a Grammy, again, Terrace Martin. It's like they explore things. There's no box. It's not a new formula. Herbie's been doing it for years, you know what I mean? But as a young artist, I think the best thing they can do, we all can do, is to not pigeonhole ourselves in that way. Because then you don't have true room to explore. You're gonna hit a wall, and then what? You're gonna be in that box. Even Mr. Heath, he was always, which I loved about him, he would always quote little rap rhymes and stuff, I mean, he was Mr. Heath, of course, in that tradition, but he would check out cats, he would often go down to the Blue Note to hear Take Six. He would go and listen to rap artists and of course his son M2May, he would listen to some of the collaborative things that he was doing and producing. So he was open to a wide array of music.
So now, and this is the stuff as students hear this sort of thing, and it's a bit opaque. It's a bit, okay, I gotta listen to lots of things and we have to. So it is hard. And what everyone wants to hear, and I'm sure you know this very well, is like, yeah, but can you just give me the instructions?
Yeah, sure.
Can you write it down? Sure. Can you tell me what's the lick or
yeah.
What do I gotta practice?
Yeah.
And you say hours and hours of practice, and the frustrated student was like, yeah, but I'm not getting there.
Yeah.
Can you give me something more solid? Can you give me that?
Yeah.
And I know I was always looking for that. Like, if I could just get the secret information.
Yeah.
They're not giving me.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is like the secret information is the stuff that takes a certain maturity and experience and whatever to kind of sink in. It just because you can hear it over and over.
Yeah.
And until you figure it out through experiencing that it kind of sinks in. But there is, as you say, lots of stuff practice. Maybe you can talk about that side of it.
Yeah.
Satisfied with that.
Yep.
What are the things you give to your students?
Yeah. So I think it's important to have a very intentional practice regimen, meaning that for me as a saxophonist, there are real key components, not even getting into playing a song or whatever, that are important. Your setup, your equipment, your sound, things of that nature. So on any given day, a practice regimen that I give to my students and even for myself, I start with proper saxophone maintenance, meaning that my reeds, I learn how to make sure I have some proper way to store my reeds, keeping my horn as clean as I possibly can, the mouthpiece and those things, making sure that the reed and the mouthpiece setup is one that doesn't fatigue my embouchure, that doesn't fatigue my whole practice regimen, meaning that the balance between the reed strength and the mouthpiece opening is satisfiable.
Can you tell us what that is?
So, okay, shameless plug. Not shameless, it is what it is. I play Van Doren products. My mouthpiece is an 8 small chamber, V16, and I use Van Doren reeds, number 2 red Java, and I have an optimum ligature. My saxophone is a Yanagisawa. So for me, that that combination works for me. But more importantly than that is that I understand how to have my air resonate in a way where it doesn't feel like that setup is too big, meaning that I gotta blow really hard to produce a sound, or the inverse. I gotta play real softly because it's not giving me enough resistance. It's the perfect balance. So in that, once I get that together, there's the whole long tone thing we talk about, meaning that I'm playing notes off the horn, and I usually like to start in the middle of the horn, like a G, for instance, middle G or F. Just playing it for 8 counts. But what I'm looking for and what I'm trying to hear and feel is the horn resonating in a way that feels like the horn is vibrant. The horn has the intonation is properly where it should be. And then once I figure out all those tenets, I just match pitches. I just start going through scales, which then translates into just, obviously scales. It translates into melodies, songs. It translates into, so that's a whole problem. But the concept is really about sound. I listen. I go back and I listen to recordings. Who do I want to sound like? And I try to emulate that sound, playing along with them. I mentioned Canon Ball. Love Canon. So maybe I'll start with like a ballad. Stars Fell in Alabama, one of my favorites, right?
I was just listening to you play that.
Yeah, I love that song. And for that reason, I play it because I'm trying to understand how his sound resonates. Like I even practice vibrato, like, like a quarter note, wah, 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 eighth notes, wah, 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 triplets, wah, 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 16 notes, wah, 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 wah. I'm doing that on the saxophone to, one, be able to control what that is, understand what that feels like. So when I play a Stars Fell in Alabama, wah, do, 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 wah, da. All of those things are things I've practiced, but now I'm putting it in a real context. So my practice is sound with all of those pillars, scales, everything is connected, scales, but I'm still focusing on the sound, but now I'm figuring out all of my scales. That goes into maybe melodies, different songs I want to practice, or etudes, still sound, technique, etudes, getting better at that, then boom, 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 then maybe jazz tunes, everything is connected, then maybe improvisation, meaning transcribing, sitting with the recordings, breaking it into small chunks that you can digest. Obviously, you're not going to sit down, or I wasn't able to sit down and just transcribe a full song. I would get 4 bars, go back with those 4 bars, get up to the 5th, 6th bar, go back, and so it's a process. And if you can only get a half a chorus of a tune, meaning transcribing in that day, great. The goal is retention, because you can do all of that in a day, and then tomorrow, if you don't remember none of that, it's all in vain. So you have to think and recall ways to be able to retain the information. And for me, it's that. All day long, I'm singing songs. Like when I was at Berkeley, I'll be walking to class, singing solos, singing melodies, calling out chord changes in my head, like verbally, not sitting at the piano, not sitting with my horn. So by the time I got to my horn, those things were already in my brain. And so it made it easier for retention, and the process had a real intentional forward motion. And also to a student who may be listening to this, you can't, one of the things I've noticed is that you can't compare yourself to others. Your trajectory and your path of how you learn and the retention is your own. You can't compare yourself, well, oh man, Jay got it in a week. I must not be good. No, it's okay. You just got to do it at your own pace, but you got to stay at it. My dad would often say, slow motion is better than no motion. Forward slow motion is better than no motion.
I love that you're saying that.
Yeah.
This is such an important message. I've made the analogy of, it's like, think of it as a bucket. just a bucket that you can never fill, but every day you just put another drop in it. And as long as you put a drop in there,
man,
you're moving forward.
You're moving forward. Yeah.
That's all anybody can do.
Yeah, and that's the key. You just got to keep moving forward. Yeah.
And Mr. East was still practicing, and he was still writing.
I know.
And he was still checking out new things. And that was the example. It's like, look, it never ends. It never ends.
Never ends.
Because it's the journey, is the whole thing.
That's right.
So when we all naturally do this and judge ourselves, and get down on ourselves because we're not where so and so is or where we expected to be.
Sure. That's
You're never there.
Yeah.
Because once you get to the next level, there's another one.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah. And unless you're talking about even those we consider who are masters, the greatest at what they do, they're still trying to climb higher to a higher elevation or explore in another realm. It's like there is no end point. There's no end game to this music. I mean, there's an end game in terms of getting to a certain level of consistent playing, but that's not where it ends. It's like
that's where a new beginning.
That's right. That's the starting place of a new beginning. And that's life. That's the journey of life. So never ends.
And so that is like the perfect interview, except for our JBL.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't turn people off and be like, oh no, man. I don't know if there's anything else that could be said about all of that, because that was just so very, very well articulated once again. So
what I'll say to that is that, again, not because you're here, I'm glad to meet you. And again, I tell folks about the channel, not because Mark is here. Mark was one who was checking it out too. You explore and really offer out information in a way that I think even as professionals or especially students can get so much useful information about from interviews, talking about different instruments and setups and just the whole gamut. I think is an important part of the evolution of the continuum of what this music should be about. So again, man, I applaud you. I thank you, and but just keep doing what you're doing.
Well, I do appreciate it. It helps to hear that.
Yeah.
It's for encouragement.
It's important.
Yep. I do appreciate that very much, and I'm very humbled to hear you and anyone else say that.
Yep.
But can we before we wrap up, I would like to talk about some gear stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's part of it.
Happy to do it. Yeah, man.
I noticed this beautiful case. I saw Mark with this case, and I said, "What? That's a nice bag you got. It's like a carry-on." And then you've got like 12 saxophones in here.
12, just 4. No, but this is the Weissman case, and
nice latch over here. I like that.
Yeah, so it's very secure, but I got my whole kitchen sink in
And what
here.
is this made out of?
It's made out of wood. I'm not sure what type of wood.
But then there's this
it's
rubbery
it's
thing.
insulated.
It's like
so it can withstand weather. And what's cool about it, as you can see, the horns don't fall out.
We've got this beautiful soprano. That's solid silver soprano.
Yep.
You got your flute.
Yeah.
What is that flute?
Yamaha.
Oh, Yamaha.
Yep.
You got your piccolo.
Yamaha 787. Piccolo.
And you got your
my clarinet.
What is that?
R13.
R13, the classic. And then you got a silver bell, silver neck. I have the same as this with 3-3.
The W033.
I got the same one.
Yep. Great horn.
Kiliani Saba.
Yeah.
Man, this is just. Now you had to custom order this.
Yes.
And you had to wait like a year to get it.
I had to wait about 11 months. Yeah, but it's worth it.
Now, the reason, maybe you can tell us why this is a particular tool you need.
Yeah. So for me, part of what I do in terms of the musician, I do a lot of performing, big bands, things of that nature, but also do a lot of Broadway in New York. So obviously sitting in a pit of a show, I've done about 6 shows over many, many years, ranging from any typical show might be alto, tenor, and clarinet. Another show might be alto, soprano, and flute. Another show might be tenor, alto, soprano, and clarinet. The last show I did, which was the Temptations show, was alto, tenor, baritone, and flute. So it's a wide array of different instrumentations, but saying all that to say, you can imagine lugging 4 and 5 different cases around. It got to be like, man, this is a drag. This all is in one kit and caboodle.
It's incredible. It's like an alto. It's like the size of an alto case, and you've got.
And it travels. I can get it on the planes, overheads, no problem.
And it looks
it's genius.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it really looks.
Yeah. Well designed. Wiseman.
Man.
Out of London.
Amazing.
Great case. And, you know, of course, it fits all of the horns perfectly. You know, so I don't know if it probably is standard. You know, we talked about what horns I have, but I'm sure it might fit it just the same with a Selmore or a Yamaha or whatever.
Yeah, and they make all different configurations as well.
You can custom it to what you want.
Yeah.
For the wood case, you can choose the color schemes that you want, the interior.
I'm gonna have to.
It's
I don't travel or play nearly as much.
Yeah,
I don't need it anymore. But
right.
Hey, look at that.
I love it.
Man.
Backstrap packed, you know. And it's not, I mean, considering what it is, it's not that heavy.
Could I?
You know, yep.
Well, okay.
I mean, it's got weight to it.
Yeah.
But you got 5 horns in there.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Man, thank you so much.
My
so
man.
good to meet you, man.
Likewise. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I got to come next time in New York. Hopefully you'll be playing live.
Yeah. You can do that after the Broadway show. Y'all can come in here and play something.
Oh, yeah. All right. We'll do that.
Cool.
All right, man.
Good.